It's Tuesday, January 20th. This is CTV at 6. Here's what's making news tonight. Thousands of power outages linger and spark concern about the state of the grid. One of Canada's most important defense companies is now Indigenous owned.
A mix of sun and cloud for the Maritimes Wednesday, and then snow and rain returns Thursday.
Live from our Maritimes News Center, this is CTV News at 6. Here is Todd Battis.
Good evening. There are still more than 9,500 homes and businesses in Nova Scotia without power right now, the result of yesterday's snow. In one of the hardest hit areas, the mayor is worried not only about the number of outages, but how long it's going to take to restore electricity. But as CTV's Callum Smith tells us, the utility says everyone should be back on the grid tonight.
The viewer who sent us this video says it was early this morning in a Halifax suburb with transformers blowing, popping off, sounding like fireworks. Nova Scotia Power says a fuse worked as it was supposed to and power was eventually restored in the area. While many lines in the city look like this, the utility says these are the scenes in Bridgewater and Liverpool.
As we get out and we get into the field to restore power, there are multiple trees on lines that have to be removed, and it takes multiple crews at each outage to restore power for our customers.
He says secondary roads there still a challenge. While most of the nearly 400 Nova Scotia Power or contracted employees were focused on Lunenburg and Queens counties, others were spread out, including here in Enfield, where they were kept busy. Asked how the company would evaluate its response to the storm, Chris Long-Tang responded by saying the utility understands it's frustrating going into a second day of outages for thousands of homes and businesses. Not necessarily good enough for some.
We had a day and a bit of commercial customers without power, so that's impacting, not just business operations, but employees, a lot of minimum wage employees.
Bridgewater's mayor says he understands the snow was heavy and wet, but he's hearing concerns from people in his town and other mayors about the number of outages that occurred too. Also raising questions about Nova Scotia Power's proposed hefty rate hike.
Is that going to give us any assurance that this is going to be plowed right back into infrastructure to make sure that we don't have a repeat of this for what is, I would say, again, not an atypical weather event?
Asked if tree trimming could be improved, Nova Scotia Power sent us a statement saying that budget has almost doubled to $45 million over 3 years. Bridgewater's mayor also saying better communication about storm response efforts are needed. The utility is hopeful that everyone will be back online before the clock strikes midnight.
Our goal is to restore power for everyone tonight.
Callum Smith, CTV News, Halifax.
A domino effect is happening at Fredericton's Chalmers Hospital, moving services and beds around so an ambulance bay no longer has to be used for patient care. CTV's Laura Brown has details and reaction.
This is November of 1975, about a year before the Dr. Everett Chalmers Hospital officially opened to patients. Half a century later, the city has long outgrown the building.
We have patients that are within hallways, within waiting rooms, within family rooms, and other locations. None of these locations is ideal.
Horizon Health has been under fire for having to resort to the hospital's ambulance bay for extra space. 13 beds were created in the garage where there's no running water or proper washrooms. Now the network is promising to move those beds to another wing, but not before moving other services elsewhere, and so on, a complex game of dominoes.
At this point in time, we need, though, to plan realistically for how we can increase our capacity, knowing that the numbers of these patients may actually increase.
The patients she's referring to, people waiting in the hospital for a long-term care bed. Right now, 142 beds are being used by those patients. A plan for them is needed now, Richard Lossier insists.
My biggest frustration is that we don't have a bed plan. And what I mean by that is that there's no new capacity in New Brunswick right now. That's going to happen starting next year. You ask me what's the next nursing home being built there? I can't answer.
The ambulance bay will still be used for administering care. Plans are to turn it into an extension of the emergency department. And while the ER needs the space, so do paramedics, says David Kuhn.
It's inhumane to unload people who are at risk of dying in the snow in the wintertime, outdoors. We need a working ambulance space.
Right now, though, it's serving the urgent need for an old hospital struggling to meet modern problems. Laura Brown, CTV News, Fredericton.
One person has died in an early morning fire outside Chester, Nova Scotia. Crews responded to a property on Balsam Drive in Chester Grant. They arrived to find a camper trailer engulfed in flames. After the fire was out, they located a deceased adult at the scene. An investigation is underway, though the RCMP say foul play is not suspected. There's increasing pressure from inside the New Brunswick legislature tonight for a full-scale investigation into the most recent death of an Indigenous person involving police. Green Party leader David Kuhn is calling for the RCMP Commissioner, Mike Duhem, to launch an investigation into how police respond to mental health and domestic dispute calls which involve Indigenous people.
He's got a responsibility to really look at this, engage in the Indigenous community, and look at the training of RCMP officers.
On Sunday, an Indigenous man was shot and killed by police at a house at Nagutkuk First Nation during response to a domestic dispute call. The Serious Incident Response Team has taken over the investigation of what led to the death of Bronson Paul. Premier Susan Holt said her government would do its part for an investigation, and late this afternoon, official opposition leader Glenn Savoy released a statement sharing his party's sympathies with the family, saying we must remain respectful to a grieving family as this process unfolds. There's a live look at Main Street in Antigonish, where it's currently -6 degrees. Let's bring in CTV meteorologist Kaylin Mitchell for our first look at the weather and that heavy snow indeed hanging around some parts of the region.
That's right. And of course, colder temperatures helping keep that snow on the ground. Seasonably cold tonight and tomorrow. Temperatures come up a little bit around Thursday, and then we get into a bit of a deep freeze at the end of this week, Friday night, and for the upcoming weekend. I did want to start off, though, talking about the cloud conditions for tonight, because, of course, there was a fantastic display of the aurora seen in parts of the Maritimes last night, despite the fact that we had a lot of cloud cover around. I'll have one of those pictures for you coming up at the end of the show. Tonight, right away, conditions for observing the aurora borealis not as favorable tonight as they were last night, because the geomagnetic storm is now weakening. But if you were looking at doing some night sky viewing, the overall sky conditions are expected to be a little bit better, because some of the cloud cover that we still have in place this evening is expected to be clearing away as we make our way towards and after midnight, down to just a few clouds for the region. Don't forget about temperatures, though. It's cold out there, so if you're heading out to take a look, bundle up. It's a waning crescent moon. You're not going to be seeing much of that tonight. It's going to be setting on the horizon early this evening. You can spot, though, the planet Saturn above the southwestern horizon this evening, and you can look for Jupiter above the eastern horizon. As I mentioned, the current strong geomagnetic storm is forecast to diminish to weaker activity as we make our way through the night, so not as favorable for spotting the aurora. Speaking of the cold, we have cold warnings that are out for parts of northern Ontario and into Quebec. Now, we are not catching this first round of fresh polar air here in the Maritime region, but we are going to catch the second round, and that's coming up again at the end of this week. Taking a look at the expected daytime high temperatures through Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday. They're going to be below seasonable even for the month of January, and it looks like that cold is going to hold on to the first part of next week, Todd. Might see it gradually moderate towards the end of next week. So colder weather ahead.
All right, we've been warned. We'll see you later in the show. Thank you. And we may be months away from what's considered pothole season, but many potholes have yet to be addressed in Halifax, some other cities no doubt too. As CTV's Vanessa Wright reports, they're keeping city crews and local mechanics busy with repairs.
The recent snowfall has meant slippery road conditions for drivers in Halifax, but thanks to more potholes, it's meant bumpy conditions too.
As of data from last week, I believe there were 235 potholes, or reports of potholes in the municipality, and that is an increase from last year.
He says that's due to swings in temperature. As it stands, the city services potholes on a priority basis.
Priority 1 potholes, we aim to repair within 10 business days, and anything on an arterial, like a really main road that a lot of folks drive on, it's within 7 business days, but crews are out there all the time making sure that the potholes are repaired.
But many fall victim to potholes wide and deep that have yet to be addressed. It's keeping this Halifax mechanic booked and busy.
I've seen some pretty bad things here.
He's averaging 1 to 2 calls a week for pothole-related repairs.
Someone saying that they damaged their rim, their tire, they need to replace both the rim and the tire. They're stuck somewheres, they need my assistance, stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty frequently.
And those repairs aren't cheap.
If you get lucky, you hit a bad pothole and it's just like a tire or something like that, that will just run you like $100, $150. If you need your rim and your tire replaced, that could be upwards of $300 or $400. But in the worst cases where it takes out suspension components, you're looking at probably over $1,000.
The city says crews fill potholes on a weekly basis, though in the wintertime, they can only apply a temporary fix.
During the winter months, normal hot asphalt's not available, so temporary cold asphalt is used to patch potholes. So any of the repairs done in the winter are temporary.
Now here's a tip from that mechanic. He says drivers should avoid swerving when they see potholes to avoid causing more damage. And of course, if anybody sees a pothole, they can simply call 311 to report it. Todd.
Vanessa, I'm guessing you saw a lot in your travels today.
I sure did.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Vanessa Wright in Halifax for us right now. And we've had plenty of snow and rain of late, but is it enough to fill reservoirs still languishing from the summer drought? CTV's Jonathan McGinnis looked into that.
The high water mark at one of the city's main water supplies has risen dramatically since the summer.
Lake Major has returned back to normal levels.
Consistent precipitation has fallen since drought conditions this summer and fall forced Halifax Water to implement mandatory conservation measures for homeowners. While appropriate water levels have returned to Lake Major, another of the city's main sources is still struggling to refill.
Pothole Lake is still low, is approximately 4 feet from being full.
That's despite Mother Nature already adding 4 feet of water over the winter. Brittany Smith says voluntary measures are still in place for residents on both water supplies.
Our concerns that if we're not going to see a lot of precipitation this winter and then in the spring, we don't want to be back in the same situation we were this past fall.
Farmers also felt the effects of a dry season. The lack of rainfall turned many fields into dust. There is, however, reason for optimism.
Looking at the ponds and things around, they're refilling for sure.
While appreciative of the rain that has come down, the past president of the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture says growers would like to see more snowfall.
With the rain falling on frozen ground, a lot of it ends up in the rivers and then ultimately flows out to the ocean. So while we're capturing what we can in our ponds and our reservoirs, there is a lot of loss there that it doesn't absorb all entirely into the soil.
Alan Melvin says farmers are adjusting to the drier conditions, but like Halifax Water, they'll take all the precipitation they can get over the winter. Jonathan McGinnis, CTV News, Halifax.
Bell Canada says incidents of copper theft increased by about 30% last year, with parts of New Brunswick being a particularly high concern. The telecommunications company, which of course owns this TV station, recorded over 1,300 incidents of copper theft across the country last year, which affected its infrastructure. Most of the thefts took place in Ontario and Quebec, but also New Brunswick.
For the last 4 to 5 years, the Fredericton and rural areas around Fredericton or Mukto Harvey have been real hot spots. Towards the end of 2025, unfortunately, we saw a real flare-up in, call it the Charlotte County area.
Last week, RCMP charged 3 people in connection with copper thefts in southern New Brunswick. Police say they received a tip from the public, which led to a search warrant where about 250 pounds of copper wire was discovered, along with firearms and other weapons. Online, police displayed drugs and cash seized after a vehicle smashed into RCMP cruisers. You can see that now at our website, ctvnewsatlantic.ca. Nova Scotians with disabilities will have more choice as to where and how they want to live. A new program is part of a human rights agreement that relies on neighbors to open their homes to provide support. CTV's Jesse Thomas now with the details.
The province believes its new home share program gives Nova Scotians with disabilities more freedom to choose where and how they want to live. Launched today, the program aims to partner people with disabilities with housing in the community by people who register to offer space and supports. The model is proven to work in other provinces.
But we also know from other jurisdictions that when it does go well, that it can grow exponentially. I mean, in British Columbia supports far more people in home share than they do in any of their other residential support models.
Officials expect the program to grow as it rolls out, but it's believed there could be 500 people eligible to enroll in care. The province is looking for providers who are paid based on the individual's needs.
Important to distinguish that this is a choice. So we aren't forcing, to reach a target, we're not going to force 500 people into home share.
Home share is part of a broader strategy to address the systemic discrimination against people living with disabilities and comes after a judge ruled individuals who were institutionalized were denied supports and services in order to live in the community.
I think home share is one of several different options to support individuals in community. And I think the important thing is that individuals have choice and that decisions about where you live and how you're supported are individualized.
As for protections, the province says there's a stringent vetting process.
Because it's not just screening for those formalities, but ensuring that we make a really good match between the person supported and the home share provider.
And the province is now encouraging Nova Scotians interested in becoming a home share provider to come forward as the program rolls out. Jesse Thomas, CTV News, Halifax.
Get the Maritime's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
The largest defense company in Canada is now Indigenous owned. The deal was made in November, but an event to mark the historic sale was held today in Moncton. CTV.
An historic event inside a massive Moncton facility to celebrate a major acquisition.
Having our company here in your city, in your province, this is going to lift Canada. First Nations people want this growth.
Indigenous-owned investment firm Flowing River Capital now owns 100% of Marshall Land Systems. The sale complete a few months ago, but some of the 100 employees here got to meet the new owners from Saskatchewan today.
Being able to acquire Marshall Land Systems and being able to build Canadian capacity on Canadian soil, I think really strikes a chord with us.
The British engineering experts build container-like systems for militaries that can be used as command centers, ammunition storage depots, or medical labs. Marshall Land Systems has a $350 million deal with the Canadian Armed Forces and contracts with other NATO countries. The deal comes at a time when the federal government is investing more in the military.
Absolutely. There's been a tremendous focus on increased spending in the defense sector, which, we couldn't have come in at a more perfect time.
Growing a defense capability takes some time, but it delivers huge economic value if you do it right. So we really welcome Canada's increased investment.
The Marshall CEO says at first glance, the coming together of the two parties may seem unusual.
But in many ways, it represents a new and important wave of investment, one that brings inclusion, long-term thinking, traditionally underrepresented communities into business leadership.
The Moncton facility could play a big part in economic reconciliation. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Moncton.
We'll step aside for our first break of this evening. A cold January night is ahead for most of us. Kalen has the details in his forecast, but next, the U.S. president doubles down on Greenland.
World leaders are convening in Switzerland this week, but for many, the future of Greenland is top of mind. I'm Christian Cordero in Washington with that story coming up.
World leaders are reacting with unity. World markets are reacting with losses. It all has to do with U.S. President Donald Trump's assertion that Greenland will become an American territory. The latest now from Christian Cordero of ABC News.
As you know,
This is the anniversary, first anniversary.
Today marks 1 year of President Trump's return to the White House, repeating his latest claim that the U.S. needs Greenland for national security.
How far are you willing to go to acquire Greenland?
You'll find out.
The president has agreed to meet with alarmed NATO allies this week while in Davos, Switzerland for the World Economic Forum, where several leaders are already gathered and concerned by the president's threats about Greenland.
We have decided to join the mutual exercise in Greenland without threatening anyone, but just supporting an ally and another European country, Denmark.
Despite the U.S. having military access to Greenland, Trump is warning 8 NATO allies to get out of his way of acquiring it or face 10% tariffs starting February 1st, then increasing to 25% in June. NATO's warning to President Trump his aggression towards Greenland is threatening the alliance with the U.S.
We are in a very bad position at the moment. We're dependent on the United States, so we chose to be lenient. But now so many red lines are being crossed.
New data shows the vast majority of tariffs are paid for by American consumers and businesses. A new analysis by the Yale Budget Lab estimates Trump's tariffs, including his latest threats, will cost the typical household more than $1,700 per year. Christiane Cordero, ABC News, Washington.
Up next, temperatures are on their way down. It will be a frigid night. Cold, but there will be some sunshine tomorrow. Kayla Mitchell has the details in the forecast next. Here's a great shot of a spot that we don't get to enough. This is Surrey, Prince Edward Island, sunny skies, very cold wind. You can hear it rattling around in the camera. And having spent a lot of time in Surrey in the winter, it can be really, really cold as that wind whips in off the St. Lawrence.
It looks cold out there right now, Todd. That's all I can say about that. Yeah. Beautiful area, though, Surrey and Prince Edward Island, for sure. We're going to talk more about the cold and even some colder conditions headed our way. Let's take a look at weather conditions across the country first. Not so cold in the south coast of BC right now. 10 degrees in Victoria, 6 degrees and sunshine at Vancouver. There is some colder air located in northern parts of BC. Not particularly cold for this time of the year. Prince George sitting at around -7. Same thing goes into Alberta. Fort McMurray -3, reporting a little bit of snow, -1 at Edmonton, and then +2 at Calgary. Now it does get colder into Saskatchewan and Manitoba. As you can see, Regina's -14 right now. Winnipeg sitting at -18. Up north, Whitehorse -13, reporting snow. Yellowknife -17, and Iqaluit right now bitterly cold, -25. This is where sort of that latest outbreak of polar sourced air is located, basically down over Hudson Bay, parts of Nunavut, and into areas of northern Ontario, as well as northern areas of Quebec. We're on the colder side as well here in the Maritimes. Fredericton -10 right now, -7 at Halifax and Charlottetown. St. John's and Newfoundland sitting at 0. Taking a look at our timeline for cloud cover and precipitation as we head through this evening and tonight. Initially, through the first part of this evening, partly cloudy conditions with a chance of flurries for Nova Scotia. There is expected to be some clearing, though, as we make our way towards midnight. Cold night across the entirety of the Maritime region. Obviously, that means a cold start to the day for tomorrow. Now, Wednesday around the Maritimes will be mostly a mix of sun and cloud, though there will be a chance of flurries for the province of Nova Scotia, especially where any of the west winds are blowing onshore off of ocean waters. That would include parts of the west of the province and around the Minas Basin, the North Shore, and locations in Cape Breton. It'd be that colder air over the ocean waters that could create some flurries. Now, heading into Wednesday evening and Wednesday night, it'll be increasing cloudiness, and during the night on Wednesday, some flurries and some light snow becomes more widespread for the Maritimes. This is a start of a weather system that will continue to move through on Thursday, continue to bring some further periods of snow to both New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island, but a mixture of snow and rain for Nova Scotia. So how much snow are we talking about? As we make our way through Wednesday and Thursday morning, there are parts of the Maritimes that could pick up some local snowfall amounts for around 1 to 5 centimeters. Then during the day on Thursday, another 1 to 5 centimeters could come down for parts of New Brunswick, as well as areas of the north of Nova Scotia. Other areas of Nova Scotia, though, with the rain mixing in, it'll probably put an end to any further accumulation. And that's what we're looking at for Thursday's weather system. Then following in behind that for Friday night into the weekend is when some very cold air arrives. Winds in the forecast for tomorrow around the Maritimes, mostly out of the west through the first part of the day. Slight turn to the southwest as you head through the afternoon. A lot of the gusts will be in the range of around 20 to 50 kilometers per hour. It's down a little bit compared to today. Low temperatures in the forecast for tonight fall well down to the minus teens for New Brunswick, down to around minus 13 for Prince Edward Island tonight. Most lows for Nova Scotia between minus 8 and minus 12, though minus 14 at New Glasgow and Antigonish, and areas of the coastline could be between minus 6 and minus 8. Highs in the forecast for tomorrow for the north of New Brunswick between minus 7 and minus 10, and down through central and southern areas of that province, most of the high temperatures between minus 5 and minus 8, though minus 3 at Campobello and minus 4 at Grand Manan. Prince Edward Island for tomorrow with high temperatures for many communities around minus 7, minus 8. Seeing a good deal of sunshine throughout the day, breezy west wind. Cape Breton for tomorrow with high temperatures between minus 5 and minus 8, though minus 4 at Port Hawkesbury. Between minus 4 and minus 6 for the eastern shore and north shore of Nova Scotia. Northern and central parts of the province with high temperatures mostly between minus 2 and minus 6. The Annapolis Valley with highs near minus 4 for tomorrow, and then between minus 2 and minus 4 on the south shore. Taking a look at the extended forecast for New Brunswick, there's that bitterly cold air arriving Friday night and in place through the upcoming weekend. Daytime highs held down into the minus teens. Overnight low temperatures well down to the minus teens, and in some cases minus 20s, and that colder air holding on into the start of next week. Taking a look at the forecast for Nova Scotia, snow-rain mix coming through on Thursday. On Friday, that's followed by flurries, but then very cold temperatures Friday night and through the upcoming weekend. Cloudier conditions expected on Sunday, and then a mix of sun and cloud in the forecast for Monday and Tuesday of next week. And for Prince Edward Island, coming up on Thursday, we've got that snow in the forecast. That's followed by flurries for Friday. Temperatures getting frigid Friday night and remaining that way through the upcoming weekend. Cloudy periods on Sunday, mix of sun and cloud on Monday, and a chance of flurries on Tuesday of next week, Todd.
Look, that just means the ski hills can make all kinds of snow.
There is the silver lining.
Always looking for one. Thanks. We'll see you towards the end of the show. Yeah. Next, we'll talk about the court's stance on the previous Liberal government's use of the Emergency Act during the truck convoy. And we have the King later on the scene.
Hi, I'm Elvis tribute artist Thane Dunn and proud Maritimer, and we're going to be talking about what we're doing on January 24th to help feed NB and food banks here in the Maritimes. So make sure and stay tuned.
Okay, so tomorrow's Bella's Top Day. We're going to have some special guests on the show with us, so please join in.
As well, destroy your debt, your chance at $100,000.
We'll have your next keyword at 7 a.m. Good luck.
Just days ago, a federal court of appeal ruled the previous Liberal government's use of the Emergencies Act to clear the convoy protests in 2022 was unjustified and violated the charter. Here to discuss the ramifications of the decision is Wayne McKay, Professor Emeritus at Dalhousie School of Law and an expert in constitutional law and the charter. Good to see you, Wayne. Thanks for coming in.
Nice to see you.
The court was definitive. The Trudeau government's use of the act was unreasonable, it said. It's certainly a significant ruling. Tell us why.
It is a significant ruling, well, and first of all, because the Emergency Act is a very significant occasion. When powers get centralized in the government, then they can do a lot of things. But it's also significant because, of course, the earlier commission had said it was legal, and now the second court, the Court of Appeal, is saying it's not. So it is very important.
Certainly puts this current government, future governments, on notice.
It does do that for sure. Now, the court was clear to say there are occasions when you can use it, albeit it's an extreme thing, but that they put a very high standard when it was appropriate to use that act.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association fought this tooth and nail. Yeah. Obviously, they're celebrating it. They've said it means that government can't govern by decree behind closed doors. Explain that.
Well, in a way, that's right. Perhaps a little overstatement. It's true. And in a time of crisis, war, that kind of thing, you do have to have very quick action. So much of what's done now by legislation in a slow debating process is done by executive order behind closed doors. And so that they're right about that. And they're right, except that they can do it if they meet the act and if they don't violate the Constitution. And that's where the civil liberties and others are saying, saying, well, you didn't do it in the right way, and you didn't pick the right occasion to do it.
Was it clear to you that was the case?
It was not clear to me, to be honest, because for one thing, when we look back on a crisis, whether it's COVID or whatever it is, it looks a bit different 3 or 4 years later than it did in the midst of it. And it wasn't that clear to me, or I think many others, that we were in fact not in some kind of a national crisis with the convoy in Ottawa and the various blocking of pathways between the U.S. and Canada. So I don't think it was crystal clear, although the judges seemed to think it was fairly clear that they did not meet the high threshold, because they don't have to establish that there is a national emergency. They have to establish they had a reasonable basis to think there was a national emergency. So even if after the fact they say, well, really, that wasn't such a big deal, it still could be valid.
Canadians don't have a lot of experience with the Emergencies Act. There was another Trudeau government. Those of a certain age will remember the FLQ crisis in Quebec when the War Measures Act was brought in. Can you compare the two at all?
Well, you can, and that's a very important comparison to make. First of all, kind of ironic, Pierre Trudeau and Justin Trudeau. But in 1970, of course, Pierre Trudeau declared the War Measures Act, which was more restrictive and didn't have as high a standard. In fact, basically, it couldn't be challenged by the courts later, but that was rewritten in 1988 by Mulroney into the current version, which does set the much higher standard. But it's similar in a couple of ways. In retrospect, the FLQ crisis was probably not as big a national deal. I mean, a person died and was certainly a big deal at the time, but not only really in Quebec. And here the courts are making kind of the same argument that, yes, there was a lot of unfortunate things happening in Ottawa, but was it really a crisis, they're saying?
Was it ramped up perhaps more because it was on the doorstep of the federal government?
Well, I think that's a good question for sure.
The Carney government is not taking this up the chain, not appealing. What does that tell you?
I hadn't actually heard that, but that's interesting. I knew they were thinking about it, but if they haven't, I guess that...
Well, that's the initial thinking is that it's not going to...
Oh, okay.
It's not going to be.
All right. If they don't, I guess what it's thinking is that the court made a pretty convincing case. It was a unanimous judgment of all 3 Federal Court of Appeal judges, and in a very long 500 and some paragraph decision, gave lots of evidence why they thought that the government did not meet the test.
We're hearing a lot from the U.S. White House talking about the American Insurrection Act, and that the president there might bring it in to suppress the dissent that's taking place in Minneapolis. Is there any correlation between our act and theirs and what's happening there?
Well, that's a really interesting and important analogy, because there's some correlation. First of all, according to the Trump administration, there is an insurrection of sorts going on, and if the state can't handle it, they're threatening to move in and do it under this federal emergency legislation, or the government emergency, same as here. And in the Canadian situation, Ontario was having great difficulty dealing with the problems in Ottawa and the other issues, so there's that parallel. I think perhaps where the parallel breaks down, the kinds of cases even contemplated in the Canadian Act are much more difficult. As the court said, it has to be a really high standard. It has to be national in scope. It has to be a threat to human life and security. It has to be extremely high order threat that can't be handled otherwise. It would appear that in the U.S., the Insurrection Act is a bit more open-ended, and as we see with all too many things with President Trump, his own interpretation is a pretty broad one of what he can do.
Sure, and it can change day by day. Wayne McKay, thank you very much for that. We'll see if, in fact, the Canadian government does decide to do something with it.
Exactly, because sometimes the first thoughts aren't the final thoughts.
Well, we certainly know that. Thank you very much for coming in.
No problem.
We appreciate your perspective as always, and we will take a time out. Still a lot ahead, so stay with us. We're going to take a look at health news now, and optimism about aging among older adults in Canada is seeing a sharp decline. CTV's Amanda Debison has that and more in the Lifeline.
A new survey suggests optimism about aging fell sharply over the last year, with financial insecurity and loneliness dampening how many Canadians feel about their golden years. The National Institute on Aging surveyed just over 6,000 adults aged 50 and older last summer for its 4th annual report of perspectives on growing older. While 57% of respondents still said they had positive feelings about aging, that was down from 62% the year prior. The latest findings show that older adults increasingly can't afford to retire when they'd hoped to. They're feeling at risk of social isolation, and 59% said they are lonely. A new study shows the mental health of people in Toronto has deteriorated rapidly over the past decade, to the point where one expert calls it unprecedented. A report was released by Thrive TO in partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association, CAMH, and the City of Toronto. It found the percentage of Torontonians who describe their mental health as very good or excellent fell from 73% in 2015 to 52% in 2022. 55% of those surveyed said the pandemic had a moderate to extremely negative impact on their mental health. Wednesday is Bell Let's Talk Day. Finally, a year after becoming one of the world's first recipients of a genetically modified pig kidney, a New Hampshire man now has a human kidney. Tim Andrews was living with diabetes and end-stage kidney disease when he received it early last year. The 67-year-old lived with the pig kidney for 271 days before his body rejected the organ. It was removed in October, and Andrews went back on dialysis. On January 12th, a near-perfect match for a human kidney donor was found, and Andrews went into transplant surgery the following day. He's now recovering from the procedure. Medical experts say organs from animals may be the answer to keeping people alive and healthy while they wait for a human donor. With Health and Medical News, I'm Amanda Debison for the Lifeline.
Time for the scene with Katie Kelly. If you're looking for a big night out with a big heart behind it, boy, you've got the information.
I sure do. World-renowned Elvis entertainer and Feed New Brunswick ambassador Thane Dunn is bringing his Cash and King Elvis birthday experience to Casino New Brunswick this Saturday, with a portion of every ticket going to feed those in need. Thane Dunn is a two-time world champion Elvis tribute artist. He's been bringing the king to life for decades. Known for his voice, the look, and the way he channels Elvis's big 70s stage energy.
Elvis was the greatest. He was cooler than the Fonz. He just had charisma he oozed charisma from every pore.
But this weekend's show is about more than the music.
Our show is pure electrifying entertainment. So, I mean, from the second that you walk in, you're going to have a smile on your face, and when you leave, you're going to be real happy. And you've also just helped a great cause.
$5 from every ticket sold will be donated to Feed New Brunswick.
Food insecurity is a terrible, terrible thing these days, affecting so many kids.
Dunn says he sees more and more families struggle and wants to do something about it.
I'm from New Brunswick. I want to see a change here. Things have changed so much, and so many kids are going to school hungry, and they're not learning anything.
In the last few years, the demand went up over 140% in New Brunswick, so it's insane.
At Feed NB's warehouse in Moncton, the organization says fundraising support like this helps them keep up.
Thane's been a special ambassador of ours for a few years now, so it's crucial. Every dollar counts, so every dollar that comes in here, we can stretch it, we buy it in volume, so we can have more impact at the food bank level.
And Thane says the total is already growing, with a goal to push it even higher by showtime.
We've reached $6,000 that we're going to be giving to Feed NB, and I believe we can make that 10 because it's such a last-minute audience around here, but we always fill her up. So book your tickets, come out, have a great night, and support a great cause.
He puts on such a great show.
He is basically Elvis.
Yeah.
He truly is. I think that there's no doubt that he'll reach that $10,000 goal.
I think so.
Yeah, him and his family, they've been supporting Feed New Brunswick for a while now. It's just so cool to see. What a great way to add a little charity component into your show.
Yeah,
Why not?
Our artists do it year-round, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So thank you for that. And the Cash and King Elvis birthday experience, again, it hits Casino New Brunswick this Saturday. That's January 24th. Tickets are available online. We've put a link on our website. It's a win-win situation, so go check it out if you can.
We're keeping up with the classics. Another example?
Yes, Ones. The Beatles' #1 hits is coming to the Maritimes for 2 big nights this fall.
No doubt, after they landed in New York, that wherever the Beatles go, pandemonium would follow.
The show recreates the band's iconic chart-topping era, taking audiences through the Beatles' 7-year rise with live performances of their #1 hits, plus a full multimedia production with photos and video on the big screen. You can catch it October 16th at the Rebecca Cohen Auditorium in Halifax and October 17th at Casino New Brunswick in Moncton. Tickets to see Ones, the Beatles' #1 hits, are on sale now. That looks incredible, too. I'd love to go to that.
Settle in, because if they play all the Beatles' #1 song, you're going to be there all night.
I know, right? Such a fun show because you can literally sing along every song.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Between
cool.
the King and the Beatles. Thank you, Katie.
Got it covered. You're welcome.
Here's what's on CTV tonight, folks.
With Aaron and Peter. Congratulations to our first Passport to Paradise winner, Stephanie Fisher. 29 more trips to be won.
We've got a trip with your name on it. Pick up your first passport tomorrow morning at 6 a.m.
This was a day to forget on the Dow Jones, which closed down almost 900 points. The markets fell on U.S. threats on Greenland and growing unease. For more, here's BNN Bloomberg's Marella Fernandez.
The American markets were closed on Monday, so this is the first chance investors have had to respond to the rhetoric. And clearly, they were shaken, continuing to sell America, sending the market nosediving. Both the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ dropped over 2%. And the threats to Greenland sent spot gold to a new record high above $4,700 an ounce. Here are the closing numbers for the day. The Canadian dollar is up to 72.29. West Texas Intermediate up over $1 to 60.36. Western Canadian Select unchanged at 45.16. And the TSX lost 340 points to slip back under 33,000. Those are your business headlines. I'm Marella Fernandez.
Let's bring in Kaylin Mitchell on the weather deck. And Kaylin, just before you give a wrap-up of the forecast, we just heard from Nova Scotia Power, who let us know that some of those power outages that they said would be reconnected by tonight will, in fact, not be back on the grid until tomorrow. So some folks are going to go the night without power, and it's going to be a chilly one.
Yeah, well, thank you for the update, Todd. And yes, it is going to be a cold night around the region. I have an update as well on the Aurora Borealis. I have received a few reports and a couple pictures that it is visible faintly on the northern horizon this evening. Very faintly to the naked eye. It always shows up better on photography. We are taking a look at a picture captured of the aurora from last night from Tim Doucette. It was taken at the Tuscot area in Nova Scotia. I want to thank Tim very much for sharing that with us. Tuscot for tomorrow, very cold start to the day. The afternoon, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of around -2. Here's our day planner. So morning temperatures several degrees below the freezing mark or into the minus teens to get Wednesday started. Fairly clear conditions first thing in the morning. The day generally will see a mix of sun and cloud around the Maritimes with a breezy west wind turning southwest later in the day. There are expected to be some isolated flurries in the province of Nova Scotia. Todd.
All right, Kaylin, we will see you tomorrow. You have a good night.
Thank you.
Coming up here tomorrow at 6, Bell Let's Talk. On a day focused on mental health across Canada, we speak with prominent advocate Caitlin Morrison, sister of the late actor Matthew Perry, about her work helping those who struggle. We'll have that conversation tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And finally for us this evening, an artist is trolling one North Carolina town, and locals wouldn't have it any other way. A Danish artist named Thomas Dambo has created 3-meter-tall trolls from fallen branches, wood pallets, twigs, any wood you can find, really. They're on display in North Carolina. There are little tags that each troll has that will tell you more information about the story of the troll exhibit. It's proven to be quite popular, a great way to get people outside enjoying nature. Those are beautiful pieces. That's our look at the day here at home. Bruce Frisco will be here with our late update at 11:30. CTVNewsAtlantic.ca has the poll and updates on the news anytime. I'm Todd Battis. We hope to see you right back here for the midweek edition of your newscast tomorrow. Until then, have a good night.
CTV News, the Maritime's #1 newscast. Watch live on Crave.